Welcome back to Deconstructing Digital, the podcast where we deconstruct the opportunities and challenges faced when on digital transformational journeys for the built environment. Today, I'm joined by Shelly from Amazon Web Services, who will introduce herself shortly, and we will be talking about generative AI. This builds upon a previous podcast episode where we talked about the readiness of the construction industry to adapt AI, where we confirmed that they really are already on that journey. So Shelly, if you could please introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So, hi, my name is Shelly Dar Rapaport. I work at Amazon Web Services as a solutions architect, more of an architect on the software side. I help companies, mainly software companies, design their IT systems and the commercial systems.
So you talked about how you help companies to design their solutions and systems. What do you think that companies really need to do in order to be ready for generative AI, ensure their people are well equipped for that journey?
Ensuring that they are well equipped for generative AI starts with knowledge and ideas. So when you think about knowledge of the employees, it's mainly around how much value those employees can get from generative AI and technology in general. Once they see the value that they get, they are more curious to find out more. And once you enable them to get that information, to get that, to collaborate about that, it gives them the opportunity to share the information between themselves and actually and have a discussion about it, what each of them is using, how they're using it, because you might be surprised to find out that many of individuals are already using generative AI and other digital tools, and you just wasn't aware of it.
I love that point around curiosity and value. I think once you build an environment and a culture where individuals feel they can be curious and rewarded for it, then that really makes sure that people are investing, developing their own skills and sharing those insights. I think that's a fantastic point. Have you seen any particular ways that companies have done it where they've actually really ensured they are encouraging people to be curious?
It starts in many different ways. Some companies just have sessions. They have a lecture about it. They have a discussion about it. Just have a common collaboration that is basically just about technology. What are the tools that you're using? What are the tools that you've heard about? Just to get the knowledge shared between employees. And some basically give people just the opportunity to build. Some actually build a knowledge house where people can look for information and get more insights on how other employees are using. It's more on the company culture and the curiosity of the employees themselves and how they feel they are empowered to share the knowledge.
I love that point you mentioned earlier about value, because what they ultimately want from it when you're developing particular use cases or using AI to solve a particular problem is how does that really move you forward, whether that removes inefficiency from the process, makes it quicker or improves the quality. One of the things I've really loved to understand is when we talk about value, is there any particular use cases that you've encountered specifically within the built environment where generative AI has really made a positive impact?
Generative AI helps you more on the decision making and creating the content. So if you think about what the difference between what is generative AI compared to what we knew up until now, what's machine learning? With machine learning, the main difference is in machine learning, the input could be complex, but the output was simple. So for example, you had lots of numbers and you wanted to predict sales output. So you had a prediction number as an output or a vector as a number. But with generative AI, the output can be complex. So you enter complex input. For example, this is my design. This is my floor plan. This is my architectural design. What do you think are the main flaws in my plan? What should I improve? How do I make it more efficient? What are the aspects that I didn't think of? And then you get the output that is more complex, and that's the added value of generative AI. And especially in construction, I think that there are many things that are planned, and as opposed to software, when you have a bug in your plan in software, it's very easy to fix. Well, to an extent. But in construction, when you have a bug in your plan, it might be very serious and very hard to resolve later on. So you want to prevent all those issues in the planning stage, and having a tool that would help you doing that and make it safer. You can say, okay, so these are all of my projects. What would you say my biggest cause for delays? What was my most significant safety issue? Or what would be the risk in my next project?
So it's really taking that real life information, as you say, complex information, and then even giving you advice and helping you plug the gaps, enabling you to be more proactive rather than reactive based on the information that you've got. I think that's incredibly exciting. You talked about that safety element as well. So where do you think the real changes can be from a safety piece? Is that linked into the planning, or actually when you're executing the work that people are doing?
I don't want to presume about construction because I'm not from that field. But what I can say is that when it comes to safety, as long as you have the data, you can get the insights from the data and fairly easily. And that is the main change that generative AI brought, because up until recently, if you wanted to get insight from your data, you had to go to a developer. You had to go and ask someone, okay, build me a dashboard, build me a system that will find these security risks, build me something that would give me those insights. And now it is available with a simple natural language question. So what you need is basically, this is the data. Now give me back, what are the risks? What are the safety risks? And the fact that it's available to everyone, to consumers, to business owners, to employees, this means that the data and the insights are available to everyone. And that's the main safety issue that is resolved here, because if you have access to that information and it's easy to get, you don't have to wait for it. That's the main value.
That's an incredibly exciting way of looking at it. It's about reducing the barriers to entry into some of these insights and getting that at everyone's fingertips. So if we're more well informed as a workforce within the built environment, then ultimately everyone should become safer because we know more about why issues were caused.
Exactly.
You made a point earlier around where the real difference of generative AI comes in the decision-making process. One of the key things within construction and the built environment is around operating with relatively small margins. Do you think that generative AI has a role to play in helping to plan better and track projects that implement it more effectively?
So we see a generative AI used in the planning, even in the supply chain, making better decisions in supply chain and anticipating delays, planning around it. We see it in the project planning. We see it in maintenance, in preventive maintenance prediction. So you can basically see, okay, so in order to avoid these issues, you might want to have preventive maintenance at this point in the project. You see it in designing, if it's architectural designs. You see it even in the contract levels. It's used all over from beginning to end in any part where you want to have a decision, a planning, a designing. It can't help with manual labor just yet, but it does give you a lot of advantages in the planning to make the margins bigger.
What I love about what you said there as well is it's around that planning, which enables you to make better decisions for the asset that you have developed. And what I mean by that is having to not go back and fix a pothole over and over again because you've planned in the correct way and you actually future-proofed what you've built reduces the cost in the long run. So it's actually enabling you to model out effectively, which then means that when you're running the asset as well, you're in a much better place to do that in the most efficient way. And then that links to quality as well. And those decisions you make up front between the cost of a material, the quality of a material, which I think is really exciting. We talked a bit around, obviously, costs there specifically. When it comes to environmental cost, do you think that generative AI has a place to play when it comes to sustainable decision-making?
So I did an exercise just last night. I took a random floor plan and uploaded it to a generic language model, just asking, okay, this is my full plan. What are my issues? What are the main issues? And it raised some issues that I had never thought of. And some of them were around energy efficiency, like that window should be double glazed. That door is facing the north rather than the south. The location of the property, the direction of the property, and so on. And some of them were around safety, or some were around accessibility, something that I had never thought of. So, for example, here you might want to add a ramp in that place. You might have accessible, it might be less accessible. And then I asked, okay, so how much should this house cost? And gave me, okay, I can't give you how much it would cost because it depends on the location. So, okay, so put it in this postal code. And then it gave me the range of pricing that was actually fairly accurate. And I continued asking questions and realizing that it knows a lot more than I thought and can get the information much better. And moreover, in terms of alternatives, I asked it, okay, so now I want to make it more energy efficient. How much would that cost me? What will be the return of investment? I don't know how accurate that was because, again, I'm not from that field. But the fact is that even if it's not accurate, you can create a model that will provide you that information. And some companies has it.
What's so exciting about that is a real life use case, just with, you say, an off the shelf standard offering that all of us can get our hands on. And if we think about what that means from an opportunity perspective, and of course, when it comes to construction and the built environment, there's much more governance and regulation and risk that needs to be considered. But it's the opportunity that lays ahead of us when we're looking at how using these tools can really enable us to make smarter decisions from a cost perspective, sustainability perspective, and also a safety perspective. Obviously, AI seems like a bit of a buzzword. Everyone's saying it. What I loved about what you've taken us through before is really explaining the differences between different types of AI. I think whilst people are embracing it, and you talk about curiosity, which is excellent, I think there's also an element of people being scared of it and the ethical components of it. Do you have any thoughts on what the potential ethical considerations are, or how companies can get prepared for using it in the right way?
So there is a movement called responsible AI. And the thing about AI is that the models are built basically on the internet. And the internet, we know, can be biased. We know that the models sometimes can create things that aren't there. It can be used to create images based on pure imagination. But can those images be shown as if they were true? And up until recently, that wasn't the case. It was very obvious when images were created by AI. But recently, more and more, we see images that are just so accurate that they might as well be, we can't distinguish them from a new reality. Exactly.
Which is scary.
It is. And so there's the bias factor of it, which you need to be aware of. And when you're planning around it and verifying that you are checking the facts, there is a human again behind those decisions, monitoring it. It's about understanding that sometimes there are hallucinations. The models are there to create things, not necessarily get you factual details.
That's such an interesting point, because I've dabbled in my use of it, and actually that's one of the things that I found that it will come back with. If I'm asking for what you could potentially do through a general Google search, right? What's the location of this place, or what's this particular use of software, whatever it may be, they always send you back to a different link. Like, that isn't one of the use cases. It's not no Google search. It's much more than that.
It can be. So you can use it. And some company, if you'd asked me that about 2 years ago, I would say, no, it's not for searches. It's only for creating new things. But now you see, for companies, they are using the large language models. That we have the Amazon Q business. Yeah. That allows you to share your knowledge base with the model and then ask factual questions on the data that you have.
Oh, wow.
So you can create, okay, so this is how we like to do our design. Now design a very similar model, but with these constraints. So you basically share your internal knowledge and use that to create something new. Or you can query, for example, based on our sales, what was the main contributor for the drop in sales in 2022, for example.
Oh, interesting.
So you get insights based on your internal information as well. The thing is, if you are using a generic one, you need to understand what is the tool you're using and what it's used for. If it's a generic model, if it doesn't have the ability to search the web, and you can basically ask it, can you search the web? It might tell you, no, I can't. And if it can't, then there is no point in asking it. Okay, so what happened last night in the match between Manchester and Liverpool? Because it wouldn't know.
And what I love about that as well is obviously we're talking about the ethical uses and considerations. It is depending on the information you're feeding it, the questions that you're asking it, and being mindful of what it might be doing. For example, the bias, etc. Do you think there'll be a real movement towards it being part of onboarding and training for organizations, like getting people skilled up on what generative AI is and how to use it?
It's already happening. So already organizations adding the enablement on generative AI specifically for their systems, and sometimes in general, just to get people more comfortable with technology. Because once you see how easy it is, then you're able to do whatever you want. I was in a webinar that was aimed for teachers. And I joined the webinar because I sometimes lecture, I volunteer lecturing to teachers on generative AI. And I wanted to see how other webinars are done. And I was shocked because the teachers had so much knowledge and it was so easy for them to just learn new things that they were at the edge of technology. I was so surprised because it was that easy. I gave a lecture to students about generative AI. I was shocked of how much they already know, how much they already use it. I'm not talking about high school students. I'm talking about primary school.
I mean, that is incredible. And that's one of the things I loved about when we started the conversation, talking about the curiosity, getting people to use generative AI. So slight spin on a very similar question. But obviously, generative AI is one component that you can use when you're doing a digital transformation. Do you think there is use cases for generative AI to actually support digital adoption for other solutions? So enabling companies to embed other solutions within their business?
And this is kind of, you would say this is a decision question, which is actually what generative AI does best. So you can basically ask, this is my organization. I'm working in a small, medium, large organization. We have this amount of employees. Their technology knowledge is not high. How should I encourage them to learn more about generative AI? You can ask it. It will give you a very, very elaborative answer with a plan. You can ask for a plan. You can ask it for a plan with timelines. You can ask, what should be my KPI? I would say that generally when we see changes in organizations, at least in technical organizations, we see that if you have 10% of the employees, you get more traction and more adoption for new technologies. So just 10% of the employees, once they're enabled, you have someone to ask for. Out of 10 people in the room, someone will have an answer about that specific technology. And just having that seed in the company allows the entire company to grow.
I think that's excellent. So it's not just about the fact that generative AI itself can be your digital transformation. It can help you with your processes, your decision making things more efficient, making things safer, making things more sustainable. It can actually be a tool to enable your business readiness and your change management. So it can actually enable you to do that digital transformation for a different solution. It's an incredibly interesting way of looking at it. We've definitely touched upon today the power of generative AI in that decision-making process and also reducing barriers for your people to be more proactive, which is excellent. So touching upon the safety element, the efficiency and the sustainability, which is great. Is there anything else that you think generative AI could really do for the built environment that we haven't touched upon today?
Let's see. We discussed the planning, the project. We discussed designing of the project. We discussed the risk management, safety management, accessibility, sustainability, maintenance, prevention. I think there are much more to come, especially around what we call XR, extended reality. So because generative AI allows software engineers to develop more and much quicker, and it can create videos, it can create complete application. It allows software engineers to create extended reality options, use sensors. So what I would see in the future is more augmented reality in the building and construction. So, for example, if you walk around in the site, you can see your design embedded in your glasses. There was a while back about a plumber just being able to connect without the much knowledge. A junior plumber doesn't know how to connect the pipes or doesn't know how to tackle a specific issue. Just by using the images of what he's seeing, he can get the assistance, and it shows the solution in his glasses on top of the pipe in front of him.
That's incredible, because then that also leads into educational upskilling, enabling people to do more sooner, which is incredibly exciting. Also that ability of being able to do more with the same when it comes to your resource pool, which I think is brilliant. So when it comes to how generative AI can help the built environment, there are so many different use cases, both from it being the tool that enables you to being a tool that enables your digital transformation, which I think is amazing. So we obviously touched on a lot. There's obviously a huge amount that you know, which is amazing. I mean, I've learned things today that I definitely didn't know, so thank you so much. But if there was one piece of advice that you wish you'd know when you started your career, that one thing that you've learned throughout your career that's really helped shape who you are today, what is that one piece, that one thing that you wish you'd know when you started at?
Never stop learning. Never. It never ends. I remember doing my engineering degree, being so tired of studying all the time. Little did I know that I will be studying for the rest of my life. Every week I have to dedicate at least one day just for learning all the new technologies. And still, it's hard for me to catch up.
It's incredible how fast everything is evolving. And actually, the thought of generative AI was just an idea. And now it's something at everyone's fingertips. So I couldn't agree more that having that open mindset, wanting to learn is so incredibly important.
We don't know what the future of our children would look like. We know for sure that we don't know.
Yeah.
At least we know that, because I would say that my parents had a very clear idea of what my future would look like, and they completely changed. So I know that I don't know, but I know what they should know. They should know how to learn new things. They should know how to learn to adapt. They need to know to get new tools, to learn new tools as fast as possible. And they need to have technology, even if they're going to be singers, hairdressers, I don't care. They need to learn how to use technology because it's going to change everyone's lives.
Yeah. So, got to embrace it. Well, thank you so much, Shelly. It's been amazing having you on Deconstructing Digital today. And we did it. We deconstructed digital.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.